All right, welcome back to Fight Talk, where we talk combat sports. My name is Austin Ullman, and a fun episode today. If UFC stars played a different sport, which sport would it be? So we're going to go through, 25 some odd UFC stars here, and just have a little fun with it. See which sport they would play if it was not the UFC. And it can't be any combat sport at all, so it can't be boxing or jiu-jitsu or wrestling or anything like that. It's got to be completely different. If I totally missed on one, let me know below in the comments. But I'm excited to see what you guys think. And so we'll kind of go, we had no 125, so we'll go 135 and up to heavyweight. And so we'll start with Sugar Sean O'Malley. What sport would Sugar Sean O'Malley play if he was not in the UFC? And this was esports to me. Talented on the mic. We've seen that with his podcast. A different type of character. I can see this guy, if he was not in the UFC ever, kind of going crazy on the streams and maybe becoming popular in that way instead of the UFC. I think esports is right up his alley. I think the obvious one that first came to mind is basketball. Obviously, he's got the shooting celebration, and he's got a lean frame that is basketball-like. But I think he's a streamer, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him make it big. If he was never in the UFC at all, never fought combat sports, I think he could have made it big in streaming. So we're going esports for Sean O'Malley. Next up, Merab Dvalishvili, the new champ at 135. I felt good about this one. Rugby. He is now listen, I'm no expert on rugby. I don't know much about rugby, but I know what a typical rugby player looks like, and it's Merab. It's short, it's compact. He probably needs to be bigger. That's not great. I don't even understand the positions in rugby. I've watched it like twice. It's really fascinating, but there's got to be a position for him out there somewhere. I don't know what it is. It's probably not like, what do they call it, a scrum? It's not. He's not big enough, but he's compact. And if not rugby, we can just say football, like a middle linebacker. He's a guy he's scrappy. We saw that in the O'Malley fight. He's scrappy. That's the word to describe Merab. How about Jose Aldo? The Brazilian, I think it's soccer. This was my most obvious. A lot of these guys, you could say soccer, right? So many of these guys enjoy playing soccer from other countries, and we know the UFC is based in so many other countries, and guys from other countries are fighting all the time. But I thought Jose Aldo was my top soccer player. Once again, he's scrappy, he's quick, he's got fantastic leg strength. We've seen that and quickness. We've seen that with his leg kicks in the UFC. So I thought he was my obvious soccer one. He's fast, right? He's got the stamina. You need fantastic stamina to play soccer. Jose Aldo, he's my soccer player. By the way, I have no idea I'm sure he's played soccer at some point. I have no idea if he's any good. It just felt right. Ilia Topuria, I felt good about this one as well. You guys are going to like this. Fencing. Ilia Topuria would be in fencing. Again, I haven't watched a lot of fencing. It's a fascinating sport to watch when the Olympics comes on. Every 4 years we get to turn it on and see fencing. And I thought I struggled with Ilia. I think he's a huge soccer fan. I'm guessing he's a good soccer player as well. But I look at his striking interactions with guys, and I think he's kind of quick. Like a fencer would need to be, certainly. I feel like a lot of UFC guys would be good at fencing with some practice, just in the way that you interact with each other in that sport, and how you have to be so quick in we call it striking. I'm not sure what fencing calls it, but Ilia Topuria is my fencer. Alexander Volkanovski, the former champ at 145, he's a coach. He's the one guy. I tried to look. I thought maybe rugby for him. I thought some other things. At the end of the day, me and Jackson, probably earlier this year, we did our basketball lineups with UFC fighters, and we said Volk. I said Volk is a coach, and I think Jackson said the same thing. You look at a typical basketball coach, shorter guy. He's bald. You can just see Volk coaching basketball on the sideline. He's got the clipboard in hand. He's drawing up plays. He's not extremely emotional And so I think as a coach that could help him, in the huddles late in games. He's very technical, right? He's not going to get overwhelmed with emotions. He's just going to get the play, right? He knows what to do. Very calm under pressure. He can win in different ways, right? His team doesn't have to shoot 40% from three every game to win. He can win it in different ways. His guys can get to the foul line. His guys are tough. He's got tough guards. He knows how to coach guards. So Volk is my coach of any of these sports. But for me, I think basketball when it comes to Volk. Coaching, Max Holloway, the Hawaii background. Think about this. Surfing, right? He's got the background with Hawaii. And again, I don't know a lot about surfing, but it seems like you need a pretty impeccable balance. And I don't know. I don't know if this is necessarily true, but I would guess you want to be leaner, taller, skinnier. I don't know. Maybe that's not the case, but that's what he is. And so, you think of his custom shorts that he wears and the Max Holloway tattoos. I feel like that is, I don't know if he's ever surfed or not, but I think that's my surfer right there. Islam Makhachev. I'll be honest, this one's out there, but I really couldn't think of anything for Islam. If he didn't do UFC, he would grapple, wrestle, jiu-jitsu. He would just do anything on the ground. And if he didn't do that, I don't know what Islam would do. But I said rock climbing. I think he seems like a guy who could, and part of it, they've got some mountains in Russia, certainly, right? So Islam's my rock climber. He's going to go climb a tall mountain. I feel like he's a guy, I don't know, he's just tough. And he's just ready for a challenge. He's just ready to prove that he's going to beat you in anything. Charles Oliveira is a swimmer. He's going to be a swimmer. I think, again, the tattoos would go so hard in this. Think about the blonde hair. I feel like oftentimes swimmers will dye the hair blonde when they go to state or something. I feel like that's kind of a swimming thing. I don't know, Charles Oliveira in that swim cap, it just feels right. He's lean, and you just think about how smooth he is in those transitions down low, the way he's able to get from top to bottom, and use different moves to do that. I think, when they do that little flip thing on the side of the wall when they're swimming, I think that would come in handy for Charles. I think he's got the perfect body composition. He's got to get in the weight room just a little bit to bulk up that physique a little bit. But I think Charles is my swimmer. Paddy Pimblett, this one was tough because you want to, so all of these guys, when I'm doing this, I'm thinking fight shape. And when you think of Paddy, you can't help but think of Big Paddy. You can't help but think of the guy who is not making 155, right? So thinking of that Paddy, the Paddy that is probably currently walking around, I went with shot put. We're talking Big Paddy here. I think he's a shot put guy. I think he's talking a little bit of trash to the other guys throwing shot put. But yeah, it's not big to the point where we're talking offensive line in football. But big enough to the point where he's just really not useful in the other sports. So we're sticking him with the shot put. Dustin Poirier, this was the very first one I put. It was just automatic. Skateboarder. This guy, you look at the tattoos. What really did it for me was the hats that he always wears. He always wears some kind of, it's like skateboarding like hats. I don't know how to explain it, but that's what DP always wears. And so he is my skateboarder. Justin Gaethje is a CrossFit guy. He's a guy who extremely built and strong. And I don't want to say he's not athletic, but he's not the most flexible being. And so we're talking, I wanted to go I don't know. He's more of a hardworking strength machine than he is a flexible Charles Oliveira type of guy. And so we went CrossFit with him. Leon Edwards, Ultimate Frisbee. How about that? Leon Edwards, the 170-pounder Ultimate Frisbee. I thought about maybe a three guard in basketball, maybe a stretch four. I feel like he could shoot it. And as a lefty. I don't know. But I ended up going with Ultimate Frisbee. I think he's a guy that could streak down the field. And I feel like Ultimate Frisbee guys, they're always... Now, with the Bilal fight, this probably isn't a great comparison to make, but the Ultimate Frisbee guys, they always got good stamina, and Leon goes 5 rounds a lot, right? He's got good enough stamina to go 5 rounds and do well for the most part. And he's a guy with fantastic hands. If you're an Ultimate Frisbee, man, you got to have great hands because, I mean, you're expected to make those 60, 70-yard bomb catches. And Leon would do that. He's got the hands to do it. Kamaru Usman is going to do the triathlon. Kind of the same deal as Justin Gaethje here. He's just a guy who's just physically just going to work harder than you, and he's just more fit than you, but can do a plethora of things. So Usman, I don't know. He's just he's got the long arms, and he's got the grappling background, but he can also strike. It felt like he could do everything, and but just not like all the way there. He wasn't at the top of any sport for me. And so I was like, triathlon. He's just going to work his butt off. MVP, Michael Venom Page, volleyball. This guy would be a menace on the men's volleyball court, right? He would, I don't know, what do they call it? Outside hitter. He'd be unstoppable. I mean, you see some of those men's volleyball players that play now, and those guys are getting up, and they're extremely skinny, and they have extremely long arms. That is Michael Venom Page. Once he gets the timing figured out and all that, he would be a menace on the outside. Ian Gary, man, this is not my best. This is not my best work right here, but it was tennis for Ian Gary. Tennis players, they're a little loud. They're always grunting. They actually get in more beef with each other and with the refs, or the line judges, or whatever they call them, then people understand. I mean, when you start to watch tennis, they're talking a lot. They're breaking their racket on the side. Like, they're talking a lot. Ian Gary, he's talking a lot. And he's long. He's in shape, right? He's got good reach. So tennis for Ian Gary. Dracus du Plessis. We went with cycling on this one. Once again, I don't know. Not my best work, but I wanted to get cycling in here somewhere, and Drickus didn't really stand out for anything. So we went with cycling for him. He's a hardworking guy. That's all I got there. Sean Strickland is going to play football. This guy is a middle linebacker, just an absolute meathead, right? Like, every football team needs it. You need your safety or your middle linebacker who's going to, just be really smart and just be able to communicate. But then you also need a guy who's just an absolute meathead, a guy who's just going to just do whatever he takes to hit as many guys as he can. He's going to cause you from some 15-yard penalties, right? It's going to happen. He's going to have the late hits, the unnecessary roughness. He's going to have the targetings, right? And, he's probably going to have a steroid suspension. He might get arrested once. He might say some things that are way out of pocket when there's, women, interviewing him in the locker room after the game. That's going to happen with Strickland, but, just getting after it. I mean, he can play DN. He's just going to get sacks. And he's probably got, 4 or 5 concussions, right? But he's just going to keep getting after it. That was a good one. Israel Adesanya would play cricket. Listen, once again, I'm not an expert on cricket, but I've seen the way that those guys move and some of the diving catches they make, and just explosive athletes who understand how their bodies work. And Israel Adesanya is that guy. Thought about going golf with this one. I don't know. Adesanya is one of those guys. It's a tough one. I mean, he's been golfing a lot, but I don't quite see the precision, and I think cricket's going to be his thing here. Khamzat Chimaev, I went weightlifting, obvious. I mean, nothing else stuck out. Khamzat, you could teach the guy to be like a D tackle in football. We could get there, but for now we're just going to have the guy will lift some weights, right? Robert Whitaker, we went with mountain biking. I listen, not a ton of analysis on mountain biking. I just think that if you gave that guy a bike in the mountains, he would feel at home. Um, Again, I don't know if Robert Whitaker does any other sports besides UFC that I can think of, but I think someone's got to get that guy a bike. Sharamagomedov, we went with hunting. He is, I mean, this is a guy who he could live outdoors. He's gotten into acting. He was the UPS driver in that one movie. But this is a scary guy, right? This is a guy that he can scare whatever animal he's hunting. He could scare him, man. He's a scary dude. Alex Pereira, man. You guys might hate me for this. This is crazy. Uh, Listen, you could say archery. That felt basic, right? Like we know the archery stuff. We know the bow and arrow stuff. You could say it. I didn't want to. I went a little out of the box here and said poker. Think about it. He's got the poker face. No one knows what this guy's got. He would be a poker legend. Maybe Dana's got to take him to Vegas and get that figured out because I like his chances. Yuri Prohashka, we did go with archery for Yuri. It has to be something in the woods. Hunting was taken with Shara. I mean, frankly, this guy's just a samurai. It almost felt wrong to even give this guy a sport because thinking of him doing a sport almost just takes some aura away from this guy. He's a samurai, but we went with archery. It seemed the most fitting. John Jones, I said football for John. DN, just like his brother Chandler. I mean, there really was not another sport out there that stuck out for John. And honestly, if he pursued football, I'm guessing he'd be in the league right now. Probably would have gone to Georgia. Probably would have gone to Georgia as a defensive lineman and been arrested like he has been. he would have fit the culture well there. Tom Aspinall. This one's crazy. I had to get a golfer in there. I said golf. I had to get a golfer. I was down at this point in the list and I didn't have a golfer, and I thought I think he could get around a little bit. There's some bigger golfers. Shane Lowry gets around quite well. And there's other guys. I mean, I don't think he's gonna. There's the hope that he can turn into a Bryson DeChambeau. I don't see that happening, but I can see him being a golfer. Not actually, but for the sake of this video, I can imagine it. Stipe Miocic would be a chess player. He is even-keeled. He doesn't get mad about things. Heck, Ariel asked him on a show today about what he said to John Jones in one of the lead-up videos, and he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry about that. Like, if you took that the wrong way, I'm very sorry." So he doesn't want to get in beef. He just wants to chill out and be precise with what he does, right? He can take 3 years off, 3.5 years off, like a chess player might. I don't know. He's just very precise with his moves. He's very smart. He's not going to rush things. And then my last one was Derek Lewis, a defensive tackle in the NFL. I mean, come on. This guy, you think about like defensive end and defensive tackle energy. Some of these guys are they're hilarious, honestly. They're really funny. And Derek Lewis would be that guy. He'd be an absolute fan favorite. Any NFL fan base would love to have that guy in post-game interviews or anything. But he could be a menace there. If we could teach this guy how to really just bull rush every play, I think things could go quite well for him. So that is my list. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. I had a lot of fun putting this together. Frankly, if there's any sport where the guys couldn't do another sport, it's probably this one. It's the hardest thing. It's probably the hardest sport to make a list like this, just because, and some of them weren't as realistic, but they were more like, because of the UFC style, you have to transfer it over to another sport, but not actually like they could do it. But it was a challenge. I think basketball and football players pride themselves in people say every basketball player wishes he were an NFL player, and every NFL player wishes they were in the NBA. It's kind of a thing. And in the UFC, you've just got a bunch of savages that if they weren't in the UFC, frankly, most of these guys would probably be working at a fast food restaurant or something. But that's why the UFC is amazing. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button. But for now, I am Austin Ullman.